This April, I had the pleasure of being invited to talk at the Aviation Global Passenger Experience Conference in Hamburg because the aviation industry wanted to think about ways of cooperating with rail and how we can learn from each other. Here's a small selection of the questions I was asked on the panel. I've edited out the other panel members and all of the voices for questions are from AI to keep people's identities to themselves. I hope you find it interesting.
We feel it's really important to help grow the network in Passenger Experience Conference to include other transport providers.
I was in a session, for example, also this morning about a train for the future. It's also about connecting the means of travel.
What is rail's experience of multimodal journeys?
Well, I guess on the one hand, there's not too many operators that offer everything from an A380 through to an e-scooter or a bike. But within Trenitalia, that's what we do through all of our commercial partnerships. And they're kind of like any other commercial partnership, really, in that you've got to get the deals right to be attractive to the market and to work for the various partners. If I look at the SNCF Air France example given about Brussels to Washington, D.C., it doesn't work for the customer that there's a 2 check-in bag limit on the aircraft, but you're allowed to take 1 bag on the train. It's crazy. And that's quite undermining to a product that could be really good for everyone, in particular the customer, because having a managed link from ground transport to air transport, where you'd otherwise risk missing your flight and losing quite an expensive ticket, is a real benefit. So that technology is clearly working there, but it's the commercial items that underpin the deal that need thinking through, and that's our experience across all the different modes we work with.
How does rail design the service proposition?
You can look at an experience being not hosted as a negative, but we try to design it in such a way that it becomes a positive so people can make the journey very much on their terms. The biggest difference that needs explaining up front is in aviation. I know you've got minimum staffing requirements. I believe it's 1 cabin crew member to every 50 guests, and that's because of evacuation rules. We don't have that in rail. There may be individual cases where there are things similar to that, but broadly speaking, we don't have that in rail. So if I have a 600-seater train, I'd probably expect a crew of maybe 3, perhaps 4 staff, and that means I can't design a hosted experience en masse. I can offer a hosted experience in a limited way in some cabins, but broadly speaking, I've got to design an independent travel experience. And therefore, I tend to take inspiration more from the automotive sector, which is obviously our main competitor, but also another independent travel mode, and actually quite a lot from the hospitality sector, because they've got similar challenges in terms of balancing the number of staff with the revenue and creating a hosted v independent experience. And that is really what drives the difference. So we can be more generous with space. We would never dream of a 28-inch seat pitch, for example. We can be a lot more forward-thinking with data because we're on the ground, so we can offer you 5G, that's your own data, plus 5G from our Wi-Fi. And then when you combine those two things together, we're basically giving you the space to use as you'd like to use it. So if you want to rest your eyes, that's fine. But if you're a business person that wants to sit there on emails or on Teams meetings, increasingly that's now possible on our high-speed network. Not everywhere, but on our high-speed network it is. So we're selling you space to use as you want, to be productive, to stay entertained, watching your own Netflix subscriptions, as opposed to a kind of one-size-fits-all scenario that you have within the classes of an aircraft.
SNCF can't operate a double-decker TGV into Belgium. With so many technical restrictions, how can high-speed rail really compete with aviation?
I have to say I hadn't heard that about the SNCF TGV duplex not being allowed into Belgium, so I can't really comment on that in particular. What I can say is that at Trenitalia, we've worked very, very hard with Hitachi Rail, who are the manufacturer of our ETR 1000 flagship train, to make it a go-anywhere train. And that is not something that's happened by accident. It's been a deliberate thing that we have worked extremely hard to get right with Hitachi, who have got it right. And certainly our advice to any other operator would be to do the same. If SNCF have taken a different route, deliberately or otherwise, that's really something they'd have to comment upon. But we're confident with our ETR 1000 we can operate anywhere that it's likely there could be demand for us across Europe. And that means if we can do it, so can the others.
What airline ideas can transfer to rail?
When it comes to airline ideas that can transfer to rail, for me, competition is the big one. Competition has opened up rail in some parts of Europe. We've got competition head-to-head in Italy. We compete in France with the TGV. We compete in Spain. But if I look at my journey from London to Hamburg, it would have cost me over £600 return to travel by high-speed train. Now, yes, that probably would have been the absolute quickest way for me to get here, but frankly, with flying being about £80 return and with reliability concerns that I have around some of the services in Germany, let's be honest, there's no way that rail is ever going to be a viable alternative in this market until there's competition to drive away the sort of monopolistic behaviour that we see around price and reliability. There's no shock in my mind that you've got lower fares, more reliability and more satisfied customers in Southern Europe compared to Northern Europe, because in Southern Europe we have competition.
The needs of passengers vary a lot by time of day. How do rail companies tackle that?
So we believe that having a product designed for everyone is how you do it. You're absolutely right. The needs of passengers do vary a lot by time of day, by time of year, day of week, and lots of different things. I don't think the railway sector has a common way of addressing that. And I'd argue that airlines don't either, although within Europe, pretty much every airline for short haul either offers one completely standardized proposition or two-class proposition. Within Trenitalia on the Frecciarossa, we've consciously designed four classes. We have our base economy class, which is designed to be supremely accessible but very comfortable. At a small supplement, we can then provide a more hosted experience with premium class. And then for people with slightly stronger purchasing power, we offer the upgrade of space. And then for those with the highest expectations and the highest spending power, we've got executive class, which is the finest of everything. And effectively, we try to serve all of those different needs with that grid of products. And sure, the demand for one class might be stronger on Wednesdays in the afternoon compared to Saturday mornings. But again, we can manage that with price.
How do train companies look at sustainability in the cabin?
For rail, we're better off trying to maintain what's already in the cabin to reduce waste, because making new plastics and other fittings for the interiors actually generates more CO2 than it saves. So for us, the focus is much more on waste because we're already extremely efficient when it comes to CO2. That's not to say that we couldn't be better. We can always be better and we'll strive to be better. But if you look at our modern trains within the Trenitalia fleet, we've got 95% recyclability coupled with unmatched CO2 per tonne. So we're in quite a strong position.
Come to PEC. It's exciting. You'll hear from great speakers and you'll hear about great subjects that everybody's talking about.